What kind of neighbor calls the police on a woman just for moving into her own home? The kind who lives next door to us, apparently. Karen Whitaker, with her perfectly manicured lawn and her HOA rulebook clutched like a Bible, stood on her porch that sweltering July afternoon. Phone pressed to her ear, eyes narrowed at the moving truck parked in our driveway. My wife, Amara, was unloading boxes, her braided hair swinging as she laughed with the movers, oblivious to the storm brewing. I watched from the living room window, my stomach twisting. We'd only been in Oak Ridge Estates for 2 days, and already trouble was knocking. The air was thick with the scent of fresh-cut grass and summer heat. Amara, radiant in a white tank top and jeans, carried a box labeled kitchen up the front steps. Her smile was a beacon, a promise of the life we were building together. We'd chosen this house, a modest 2-story with a wraparound porch, because it felt like a fresh start. After years of military postings, deployments, and long-distance love, Amara and I were finally putting down roots. But Karen, our next-door neighbor, didn't see a couple starting a new chapter. She saw a black woman moving into a pristine, mostly white neighborhood, and apparently, that was enough to dial 911. I stepped outside, the screen door creaking behind me. "Everything okay, babe?" I called, tried to keep my voice light. Amara turned, her brown eyes catching the sunlight, and gave me a thumbs up. She didn't see Karen yet, didn't hear the clipped, urgent tone of her voice as she spoke into the phone. "Yes, officer, there's someone suspicious in the neighborhood. She's unloading boxes, but I don't know her. This is a safe community. We don't tolerate strangers." Strangers? The word hit me like a punch. Amara wasn't a stranger. She was my wife, a Navy commander with 12 years of service, a woman who'd led missions in war zones and come home to me with stories she couldn't always share. I crossed the lawn, my sneakers sinking into the grass, and called out to Karen. "Hey, Karen, that's my wife. She's moving in. No need to worry." Karen's head snapped toward me, her blonde bob barely moving, stiff with hairspray. She lowered the phone slightly, her lips pursed. "Oh, Ethan, I didn't realize. I just know how it is. You can't be too careful." Her smile was tight, like she was trying to sell me her innocence. I didn't buy it. I'd seen that look before. On people who claimed they weren't prejudiced, but clutched their purses when Amara walked by. Before I could respond, a police cruiser pulled up, its lights flashing silently. 2 officers stepped out, their boots heavy on the pavement. Amara set her box down, her posture shifting, shoulders back, chin up, the way she stood when she was commanding a room. The movers paused, glancing between us and the cops. The air felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "Ma'am," one officer said, approaching Amara. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with a buzz cut and a hand resting on his belt. "We got a call about a suspicious person. Can you tell me what you're doing here?" Amara's smile didn't waver, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, the exhaustion of having to prove herself again. "I'm moving into my house," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This is my home. I live here with my husband." She gestured toward me. The officer glanced at me, then back at her. "Can you show me some ID?" I felt my fist clench. This was our home, our driveway, our life. And yet, here was Amara being asked to justify her existence. Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching like she was directing a play. I wanted to storm over, to demand why she thought she could police our lives. But Amara's hand brushed mine, a silent signal to stay calm. She reached into her back pocket, pulling out her wallet. "Sure thing," she said, her tone almost too polite. The officer took a step closer, his partner scanning the scene. The movers shifted uncomfortably, and I could feel the neighbors' eyes from behind their curtains. This was Oak Ridge Estates, after all, a place where everyone knew everyone's business, and Karen was the self-appointed gatekeeper. Amara flipped open her wallet, revealing her military ID. Not just any ID, a Navy commander's ID, the kind that carried weight. The officer's eyebrows shot up, and his posture softened. "Commander Jackson," he said, reading her name. "Thank you for your service, ma'am." Karen's face froze. Her arms dropped to her sides, and for the first time, she looked small, uncertain. Amara nodded at the officer, her smile returning, but there was steel in it now. "Just doing my job," she said, "like you're doing yours." The officers apologized, tipped their hats, and left. Karen muttered something about a misunderstanding and retreated into her house. But as the cruiser pulled away, I knew this wasn't over. Karen had drawn a line, and Amara wasn't the type to let it slide. Neither was I. That night, as we unpacked boxes in our new living room, Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting silverware. She thought I was a threat, she said, her voice quiet but sharp. A black woman with a moving truck. That's all it took. I knelt beside her, taking her hand. "We'll handle it. Together." Her eyes met mine, fierce and unwavering. "Oh, we will, but not the way she expects." The next morning, the HOA meeting notice arrived, slipped under our door. Karen was the president, and she'd called an emergency meeting to discuss neighborhood safety. I read the words, my jaw tightening. Amara glanced at the paper and laughed. A low, dangerous sound. "She want to fight?" she said. "Let's give her one." We spent the next few days settling in, but the tension hung over us like a storm cloud. Neighbors smiled politely when I waved, but their eyes darted away. Whispers followed us at the grocery store. Karen's call to the police had spread like wildfire, and now we were the new couple with the story. But Amara didn't flinch. She hung her Navy commendations on the wall, her uniform pressed and ready in the closet. She was preparing for battle, and I knew better than to underestimate her. The HOA meeting was set for Saturday at the community center, a squat building with beige walls and 2 bright fluorescent lights. We arrived early, Amara in a crisp blazer, me in a button-down, both of us ready to face whatever Karen had planned. The room was half full, 20 or so neighbors, most of them older, their faces a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Karen stood at the front, her clipboard in hand, her smile as polished as her kitchen counters. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "We're here to discuss recent concerns about safety in Oak Ridge Estates. As your HOA president, it's my duty to ensure our community remains a place where everyone feels secure." I felt Amara tense beside me. Karen's eyes flicked toward us, then away, as if we were an afterthought. She went on, listing vague complaints about outsiders and unverified residents. It was clear who she meant. The room murmured, heads nodding, and I realized this wasn't just about Karen. She'd rallied others, feeding their fears, turning our arrival into a threat. Then Amara stood. The room went silent, all eyes on her. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. "I'm Commander Amara Jackson," she said, her words cutting through the air. "My husband, Ethan, and I moved here to start a new chapter. But it seems some of you have already decided who I am." Karen's smile faltered. "This isn't personal, Amara," she said, her tone patronizing. "We just want to keep our neighborhood safe." "Safe from what?" Amara asked, her voice steady but sharp. "From a Navy officer? From a homeowner? Or from someone who doesn't look like you?" The room erupted in whispers. Karen's face reddened, but before she could respond, an older man in the back stood up. His name was Tom, a retired mechanic who lived across the street. "I saw what happened," he said, his voice gruff. "Karen called the cops on you for no reason. That's not safety. That's prejudice." The twist hit like a wave. Tom, who'd barely said 2 words to us since we moved in, was taking our side. Heads turned, murmurs grew louder. Karen's clipboard trembled in her hands. Amara seized the moment, stepping forward, her presence commanding the room. "If this is about safety, let's talk about trust," she said. "Because I've fought for this country, and I shouldn't have to fight to live in my own home." The meeting spiraled from there. Neighbors argued, some defending Karen, others siding with Tom. Amara and I stood our ground, answering questions, sharing our story. By the end, Karen's authority was shaken, but she wasn't done. She adjourned the meeting with a tight smile, promising to review the concerns. As we left, I caught her glaring at Amara, and I knew this was far from over. The days after the HOA meeting felt like walking through a minefield. Karen's influence lingered, her allies whispering in driveways, their eyes following us as we mowed the lawn or walked to our car. But Amara didn't waver. She greeted every neighbor with a smile, her confidence a quiet rebellion. I watched her, amazed as always, but worried not at me. Karen wasn't the type to back down, and I sensed she was planning something bigger. By Wednesday, the neighborhood was buzzing with a new rumor. Karen was pushing for a resident verification policy requiring homeowners to submit proof of ownership to the HOA. It sounded neutral, but we knew better. It was a direct jab at Amara, a way to question her place here without saying it outright. I found the proposal slipped under our door, printed on crisp HOA letterhead, Karen's signature at the bottom like a taunt. Amara read it over breakfast, her coffee steaming beside her. "She's trying to make this official," she said, her voice calm but laced with steel. "She wants to humiliate me." I reached for her hand. "She won't. We'll fight this." Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the weight she carried. Not just Karen's prejudice, but the years of proving herself in a world that too often doubted her. "I'm not fighting for her approval, Ethan," she said. "I'm fighting for us, for our home." We decided to counter Karen's move with one of our own. Amara had connections. Years in the Navy gave her a network of allies, from legal experts to community organizers. She made calls, her voice steady as she explained the situation to a friend in the JAG Corps. By Friday, we had a plan. We'd challenge the policy at the next HOA meeting, armed with legal precedent and public support. But first, we needed allies in the neighborhood. That's when Tom, the gruff mechanic, showed up at our door. He held a six-pack of beer, his weathered face serious. "I don't like bullies," he said, stepping inside. "Karen's been running this place like her personal kingdom for years. What she did to you, too. That's not right." Amara offered him a seat, and we talked for hours. Tom wasn't alone. Others in the neighborhood were tired of Karen's reign. There was Lila, a single mom who'd been fined for her son's skateboard ramp, and Javier, a landscaper who'd clashed with Karen over his truck's commercial appearance. Together, we formed a quiet coalition, meeting in our living room to strategize. Amara led the discussions, her commanding presence turning neighbors into allies. The twist came on Saturday morning, when a letter arrived from the city. It wasn't from Karen or the HOA. It was from the mayor's office, addressed to Amara. She'd been selected for a community service award for her work mentoring young women in STEM, a program she'd run during her last deployment. The ceremony was in 2 weeks, and the mayor wanted to feature Amara's story in the local paper. I watched her read the letter, her eyes shining with pride and something else, resolve. "This changes things," she said, folding the letter carefully. "Karen's about to learn who she's dealing with." We used the award to our advantage, inviting neighbors to a small gathering at our house the night before the next HOA meeting. Lila brought homemade empanadas, Javier brought his wife and kids, and Tom brought stories of Karen's past overreaches. The living room buzzed with laughter and warmth, a stark contrast to the tension outside. Amara shared her story, not just the Navy, but her childhood in Chicago, her dreams of flying, her fight to rise through the ranks. By the end of the night, our coalition had grown. People who'd once avoided us were now shaking our hands, promising to show up at the meeting. The second HOA meeting was packed. The community center overflowed with neighbors, some curious, others angry. Karen stood at the front, her clipboard replaced by a projector screen displaying her verification policy. She spoke with the confidence of someone who thought she'd already won. "This is about protecting our community," she said, her eyes avoiding ours. "We need to know who belongs here." Amara stood again, this time with a folder in hand. "I agree," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Let's talk about who belongs. Because I belong here. My husband belongs here. And we're not going anywhere." She opened the folder, revealing documents. Our deed, her military records, and a letter from her JAG friend outlining the legal flaws in Karen's policy. The room buzzed as she passed copies to the crowd. This policy isn't about safety, Amara said. It's about control, and it violates state law. Karen's face paled. She stammered, trying to pivot, but the crowd wasn't with her. Tom stood, his voice booming. I've lived here 20 years, and I've never seen a policy this ridiculous. You owe Amara an apology. Others joined in. Lila, Javier, even neighbors we barely knew. The meeting turned chaotic, voices overlapping, accusations flying. Karen tried to regain control, banging her gavel, but the room was done with her. Amara didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on Karen's, daring her to push harder. That night, as we lay in bed, Amara stared at the ceiling. She's not done, she said. People like Karen don't quit. I pulled her close. Neither do we. Karen's next move came faster than we expected. By Monday, signs appeared on lawns across Oak Ridge estates. Support neighborhood safety. Vote Karen for HOA president. She was running for re-election, doubling down on her campaign of fear. The signs were glossy, professional, and everywhere. She turned our fight into her platform, painting herself as the protector of the neighborhood and us as the threat. Amara wasn't fazed. She faced worse than campaign signs, insurgents, bureaucracy, the weight of command. She's playing dirty, she said over coffee, her eyes scanning the street. So we play smart. We rallied our coalition, meeting nightly in our living room. Tom brought blueprints of the community center, pointing out fire code violations Karen had ignored as president. Lila dug into HOA records, uncovering fines Karen had imposed unfairly. Hundreds of dollars for minor infractions, like unapproved mailbox colors. Javier offered to print flyers, simple ones we could afford, highlighting Amara's award and her commitment to fairness. Our message was clear. Oak Ridge deserved better than Karen's fear-mongering. The twist deepened when Lila found something else in the records, a lien on Karen's property from 5 years ago, tied to unpaid contractor fees. It was public record, but Karen had buried it, claiming her house was debt-free during HOA elections. Lila's hand shook as she showed us the documents. She's been lying to everyone, she said. This could end her. Amara hesitated. We don't stoop to her level, she said, but we don't hide the truth either. She decided to use the lien strategically, not as gossip, but as proof of Karen's hypocrisy. If she was so concerned about standards, why hadn't she disclosed her own financial mess? The campaign became a chess game. Karen's signs multiplied, her allies knocking on doors, spreading half-truths about outsiders lowering property values. We countered with community outreach, barbecues, coffee chats, even a kids' soccer game in the park where Amara coached and I grilled burgers. Neighbors who'd once avoided us started listening. They saw Amara's strength, her warmth, and they began to question Karen's narrative. The tension peaked the night before the election. Karen hosted a safety forum at the community center, inviting a local sheriff to speak. It was a power move designed to intimidate. The room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Karen stood at the podium, her voice dripping with concern. We need leadership that prioritizes safety, she said, her eyes flicking toward us. Leadership you can trust. Amara didn't wait for an invitation. She stood, her navy blazer impeccable, and walked to the front. The sheriff watched, curious, as she took the microphone. I've spent my career protecting this country, she said. I know what safety means. It's not about fear or division. It's about trust, community, and accountability. She turned to Karen, her voice steady. If we're talking trust, let's talk about the lien on your property, Ms. Whitaker. The one you never disclosed to this community. The room gasped. Karen's face went white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The sheriff raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift. Amara didn't gloat. She laid out the facts, calm and precise, letting the truth do the work. Neighbors whispered, heads turning toward Karen, who stammered about personal matters and misunderstandings. The sheriff stepped in, redirecting the conversation to actual safety concerns, streetlights, speed bumps, things that mattered. But the damage was done. Karen's facade was cracking, and the room saw it. As we left, Tom clapped me on the shoulder. "Your wife's a force," he said. "Karen's done for." But I wasn't so sure. Karen's eyes followed us out, burning with something darker than defeat, desperation. I'd seen that look in people backed into corners, and it never ended well. The election was Saturday, and the neighborhood buzzed with tension. We spent the day knocking on doors, shaking hands, sharing our vision for a fair Oakridge. Amara was tireless, her smile unwavering even as Karen's allies glared from their porches. By evening, we were exhausted but hopeful, gathered with our coalition at the community center for the vote. The results were close, too close. Karen won by a handful of votes, her smile triumphant as she took the podium. "Thank you for your trust," she said, her voice saccharine. "I'll continue to keep Oakridge safe." Amara squeezed my hand under the table, her jaw tight. We'd lost the battle, but the war wasn't over. Karen's victory felt hollow. Neighbors avoided her gaze, and whispers of the lean lingered. She'd won, but her grip on the neighborhood was slipping. That night, as we sat on our porch, Amara stared at the stars. "She thinks she's untouchable," she said. "But she's wrong." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Karen had won this round, but Amara was already planning the next move. And I knew one thing for sure. My wife didn't lose fights. The weeks after the election were quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that hums with tension like the moment before a bomb detonates. Karen's signs disappeared, but her presence loomed. She patrolled the neighborhood in her golf cart, clipboard in hand, issuing citations for overgrown hedges or unapproved lawn ornaments. It was her way of reasserting control, reminding everyone who was in charge. But the neighborhood was changing. People waved to us now, stopped to chat. Amara's award ceremony had been in the paper, her photo on the front page, and it shifted something. Karen's allies were quieter, their loyalty wavering. Amara didn't let up. She organized a neighborhood watch, not the kind Karen preached about, but one focused on community, checking on elderly residents, organizing cleanups. She invited everyone, even Karen's supporters, and slowly they came. Lila's son led a group to paint over graffiti at the park, and Javier's wife taught a gardening class. Our porch became a gathering place, laughter spilling into the evenings. Karen watched from her window, her curtains twitching, but she didn't join. The twist came unexpectedly, like a spark in dry grass. Tom, digging through more HOA records, found emails between Karen and a developer. She'd been negotiating to sell a community lot, a park where kids played, to a company planning condos. The deal was secret, buried in vague meeting minutes, but explained her obsession with property values. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was profiting from it. We confronted her at the next HOA meeting, armed with printouts. The room was tense, neighbors shifting in their seats. Karen stood at the podium, her smile brittle. "These accusations are baseless," she said, her voice shaking. "I've always acted in Oakridge's best interest." Amara stood, her folder thicker this time. "Then explain these," she said, holding up the emails. She read them aloud, each word landing like a hammer. Neighbors gasped, some shouting questions. Karen's face crumpled, her hands gripping the podium. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. "I was exploring options." "For yourself?" Tom interrupted, standing. "You didn't tell us because you knew we'd say no." The room erupted. Neighbors demanded answers, their trust in Karen shattered. She tried to deflect, blaming miscommunication, but no one was listening. The meeting ended in chaos, with a motion to remove Karen as president gaining traction. She left red-faced, her clipboard forgotten on the table. But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, we woke to a certified letter from her lawyer, accusing us of defamation and threatening a lawsuit. It was a desperate move, one that reeked of panic. Amara read the letter, her lips curving into a small smile. She's scared, she said. Good. We met with her JAG friend, who laughed at the letter. It's a bluff, she said. Karen's got nothing. But the threat hung over us, a reminder that Karen would fight dirty. We doubled down, gathering signatures for a recall vote. Neighbors who'd stayed silent before now signed, their outrage fueled by the developer deal. By the end of the week, we had enough to force a special election. The night before the recall vote, Karen showed up at our door. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes wild. You've ruined everything, she said, her voice low and venomous. This was my community. Amara stepped forward, unflinching. It's our community, she said, and we're taking it back. Karen stared, her hands trembling, then turned and left. I watched her go, feeling a mix of pity and resolve. She'd built her world on control, and it was crumbling. The recall vote was unanimous. Karen was removed as president, replaced by Tom, who promised transparency and fairness. The community lot was saved, the developer deal scrapped. Neighbors cheered, clapping Amara on the back, thanking her for leading the charge. But as we walked home, I saw the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd fought for us, for Oak Ridge, but it had taken a toll. That night, we sat on the porch, the air cool with the promise of fall. Amara leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. I didn't want this fight, she said, but I'm glad we won. I kissed her forehead. You always do. With Karen gone, Oak Ridge felt lighter, like a weight had lifted. The neighborhood watch grew, kids played in the park without fear of fines, and our porch stayed a hub of laughter and conversation. Amara's award ceremony became a celebration for the whole community, with neighbors packing the city hall to cheer her on. She stood at the podium, her Navy uniform gleaming, and spoke about unity, resilience, and the power of standing up. I watched, my chest tight with pride, knowing what it cost her to get here. But Karen's shadow lingered. She didn't leave Oak Ridge. She stayed in her house, her curtains drawn, her golf cart parked. Neighbors whispered about her, some pitying, others angry. She'd lost her power, but not her resentment. I caught her watching us once, her eyes cold from her porch, and I wondered what she was planning. The twist came quietly, almost unnoticed. A week after the ceremony, Lila found an old HOA complaint filed by Karen's late husband, Robert. It was from years ago, before we'd moved in, accusing a black family of disrupting the neighborhood with their music. The family had left soon after, driven out by fines and harassment. The complaint was a mirror of what Karen had done to us, and it hit Amara hard. This isn't just about me, she said, her voice heavy. It's a pattern. She decided to act. Amara reached out to the family, now living across town, and invited them to our next neighborhood watch meeting. Their names were Marcus and Aisha, and they came with their 2 kids, hesitant but curious. Amara welcomed them, sharing her own story, and Marcus opened up about their time in Oak Ridge, Karen's complaints, the constant scrutiny, the feeling of being unwelcome. The room listened, some neighbors tearing up, others nodding in recognition. It was a reckoning, a chance to face the past and rebuild. Amara proposed a community charter, a set of principles for Oak Ridge: fairness, inclusion, transparency. Neighbors voted unanimously to adopt it, and Marcus and Aisha offered to help lead the next cleanup. It felt like a turning point, a promise to do better. Karen didn't show, but word of the meeting reached her. The next day, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. She was leaving, her reign truly over. Neighbors speculated. Some said she was humiliated, others that she couldn't face the community she'd tried to control. I didn't care why. I was just glad she was gone. Amara and I stood on our porch that evening, watching the sunset. We did this, I said, squeezing her hand. You did this. She smiled, but it was bittersweet. We did it for us, she said, and for everyone who comes after. The months that followed were a rebirth for Oak Ridge. The community charter became our North Star, guiding everything from park cleanups to block parties. Amara took on a leadership role, not as president, but as a voice people trusted. She mentored kids, organized workshops, and even convinced the city to fund new playground equipment. The neighborhood felt alive, connected in a way it hadn't been before. But healing wasn't instant. Some neighbors still carried old biases, their smiles hesitant when Amara spoke. She noticed, but she didn't push. Change takes time, she'd say, her patience a strength I envied. I want to shake people, to demand they see her the way I did. But Amara knew better. She led by example, letting her actions speak. The twist lingered in small moments. Aisha and Marcus became regulars at our gatherings, their kids playing with Lila's son. One evening, Aisha shared a photo from their time in Oak Ridge, a family barbecue, kids laughing, the kind of joy Karen had tried to erase. It was a reminder of what we'd fought for, and it fueled us to keep going. Karen's house sold quickly, bought by a young couple with a newborn. They joined our neighborhood watch, eager to be part of the new Oak Ridge. Her absence was a relief, but it didn't erase the scars. Amara and I talked about it late at night, her head on my chest, her voice soft. I wonder if she ever saw me, she said. Not as a threat, but as a person. I didn't have an answer. Karen's prejudice was her own prison, and she'd chosen to stay locked in it. But Amara was free, and so were we. We'd built something stronger than her fear, a community that stood together, that chose trust over division. One spring evening, we hosted a barbecue, the park filled with neighbors, music, and laughter. Amara stood at the grill, flipping burgers, her smile brighter than the sunset. Tom raised a glass, toasting to new beginnings. Lila's son ran by, chasing Marcus's daughter, their laughter echoing. I watched it all, my heart full, knowing this was the life we'd fought for. Years later, Oak Ridge Estates is unrecognizable in the best way. The park is a hub of life, kids on swings, families picnicking, neighbors chatting under the oaks. Amara's charter is still in place, a quiet promise we all keep. She's retired from the Navy now, running a nonprofit for veterans, her energy as fierce as ever. I'm still her biggest fan, still amazed by the woman who turned a neighborhood upside down and made it better. The twist that stays with me is the memory of that first day. The police cruiser, Karen's smug smile, Amara's unflinching strength. It could have broken us, but it didn't. It built us, and it built Oak Ridge. We don't talk about Karen much anymore. She's a footnote, a lesson in what happens when fear meets courage. On our 10th anniversary, we sit on our porch, the same one where we planned our fight. Amara's hair is grayer now, her laugh lines deeper, but her eyes still spark with that fire I fell in love with. We did good, didn't we? She says, her hand in mine. I nod, looking out at the neighborhood we helped shape. Yeah, babe, we did great.